Last month, I did a video ranking each of the 20 Premier League managers based on their playing careers. In typical 21st century fashion, that video is already dated as the managerial merry-go-round that is English football rolls on. I suspect it will be a similar story with today's video, which is the exact same concept, but with regards to the Championship, the second tier of football in England, where job security is just as fragile. To be clear, I will be ranking each of the managers of all 24 current Sky Bet Championship teams based on their talents and achievements within the game during their playing days. The list is ranked from worst to best, and without further ado, I'll get cracking. Thomas Frank. A very well-run club who continue to punch above their weight, Brentford are at it again this season, currently in 7th place at the time of recording. They have been under the management of Thomas Frank since October 2018, who stepped up from his role as assistant manager following Dean Smith's departure for Aston Villa. There are a couple of Championship managers who had virtually no playing career, and Thomas Frank is one of them. The 46-year-old Dane played a little bit of amateur football as a midfielder, but began coaching under 8 and under 12 teams when he was just 22 years old. Pep CLOTET. Recently instated as Birmingham City's permanent boss following a brief interim period in charge of the club, Pep CLOTET has been coaching in England for just over 6 years now. The 42-year-old arrived on these shores in November 2013 to become Gary Monk's assistant at Swansea, and he followed the former Swans boss to Leeds United and Birmingham City, with a brief stint of his own at Oxford United in between. When Gary Monk was sacked by the Blues over the summer, CLOTET didn't follow his lead however, and instead took on first-team managerial duties himself. Like Frank, CLOTET only ever played amateur football briefly in Catalonia before moving into coaching in his 20s. Danny Cowley. Mid-season Huddersfield Town appointment Danny Cowley was recruited by the Terriers following 3 impressive seasons at Lincoln City. Cowley's playing days were cut short due to injury before his 30th birthday, but it didn't bring an end to an illustrious career. The Havering native only ever played non-league football, turning out for the likes of Romford, Hornchurch and Brentwood Town. Remarkably, that's enough to put him ahead of 2 other managers. Steve Cooper. The first few managers in this video are all relatively young, and that could be taken as a sign of the times inasmuch as a prestigious playing career is no longer seen as being crucial for managerial success. 39-year-old Welshman Steve Cooper began his career at Wrexham but never played a game for the club, playing his only regular football for Bangor City and retiring aged 24. He returned to Wrexham as a youth coach before becoming academy manager at Liverpool and eventually taking charge of England's under-16s and under-17s. He won a World Cup with the latter and he was appointed by Swansea in June of this year. Mark Warburton. Even as we come to our 5th manager in the form of QPR boss Mark Warburton, we're still looking at a manager who never tasted league football as a player. Mark Warburton came through the Leicester City Academy but spent his entire 7-year senior career in the non-league game with Enfield and Boreham Wood. He spent more than a decade following the end of his playing days working as a trader while coaching part-time, but got his first big break in management at Brentford. He now manages their West London rivals Queen's Park Rangers, who found themselves 16th in the Championship at the time of recording. Marcelo Bielsa. A strong case could be made for Marcelo Bielsa being the best manager in the Championship, and at the very least the most high profile, but he certainly wasn't the best player. The eccentric 64-year-old Argentine did register 25 appearances for his boyhood club Newell's Old Boys, more through hard work than any God-given talent, and he eventually gave up on having a successful playing career. Bielsa's pace was said to be his main undoing, and having dropped down the divisions following his departure from Newell's, he retired at 25 to coach Buenos Aires University team. Gerhard Struber. It gets a little trickier as we approach the mid-table mediocrity of Championship managers as players, and my choice in 18th is Gerhard Struber. Struber was a promising young midfielder who came through the youth ranks at SV Austria Salzburg, now known as RB Salzburg, and he made 3 appearances for Austria's under-21s at international level. He made 50 senior appearances in 6 seasons in Salzburg, departing aged 24 and dropping down the leagues before returning to SV Austria Salzburg as a player coach at the age of 31. Graeme Jones. Luton Town boss Graeme Jones took over at Kenilworth Road in May 2019 for what is his first job in senior first-team management. For the last 12 years, Jones has served as Roberto Martinez's assistant at Swansea, Wigan, Everton and the Belgium national team. As a player, Jones scored prolifically as a forward, albeit never at the highest level. His most impressive form came during a 3-year stay with Wigan Athletic in the 3rd and 4th tiers of English football, preceding a £100,000 move to St Johnstone. Lee Johnson. Bristol City manager Lee Johnson spent the bulk of his playing days playing under his father, Gary Johnson, at Yeovil Town, and Bristol City. A diminutive central midfielder, Johnson won 2 promotions at Yeovil, going from the Conference to League One, and making 5 appearances for England's C team whilst in the non-league game. He went on to make almost 200 appearances for Bristol City, mostly in the Championship, and almost reached the Premier League in 2007-08 when the Robins lost their playoff final to Hull City. Alex Neil. An irate manager who rarely seems settled on the touchline, Alex Neil is currently doing his best to ensure Preston North End qualify for a playoff spot in the Championship. Before turning to management, Neil was a decent midfield player, featuring the 2nd and 3rd tiers of English football and the 1st and 2nd tiers of Scottish football. Neil spent the bulk of his career playing for Barnsley and Hamilton Academical, and never won a cap for Scotland. Grant McCann. The first full international in this video, Grant McCann won 39 caps for Northern Ireland between 2001 and 2012. I always thought McCann was a solid midfielder with a brilliant left foot, but he never played club football at the highest level, so he's limited to 14th place. McCann played predominantly for Cheltenham Town, Scunthorpe United and Peterborough United, before turning his attention to coaching in 2015. Neil Harris. Neil Harris ranks 4th in Millwall's all-time appearance charts and top in terms of the club's all-time record goal scorers. A legend at the Den, Harris spent 10 years with Millwall in 2 separate stints, as well as turning out for Cardiff City, Nottingham Forest and Gillingham. That means most of Harris's playing days were spent in the 2nd and 3rd tiers, and he once made the then 2nd Division, now League One, PFA Team of the Year. Gary Monk. Into the top half, Sheffield Wednesday boss Gary Monk is the first manager in this video who played more than a handful of games in the Premier League. Monk spent 8 years as a bit part player at Southampton in the top flight, registering 13 appearances, but dropped down into League 2 with Swansea City in 2004. Monk went on to spend a decade with the Swans, winning 3 promotions to reach the Premier League, where Monk spent 2 seasons before becoming the Swans manager. Paul Cook. Wigan manager Paul Cook is a Liverpudlian who began his career with non-league Merseyside Minnows Marine. He went on to star for the likes of Wigan Athletic, Wolverhampton Wanderers and Burnley as a central midfielder, predominantly in the 2nd tier of the English game. A fan favourite at Wolves, Cook possessed a wicked long-range left-footed shot, and he went on to play deep into his 30s with Accrington Stanley. Michael O'Neill. Another mid-season appointment, Michael O'Neill returned to club management following 8 years out of the day-to-day managing at club level last month. Brecon City and Shamrock Rovers are the only other teams O'Neill has managed in the club game, but the performances he has been able to get out of the Northern Irish national team has seen his stock rise significantly within the game. As a player, O'Neill was something of a journeyman, but a talented one at that. He won 31 caps for Northern Ireland and played top-flight football in both England and Scotland with the likes of Newcastle United, Dundee United and Hibernian. Gary Rowett. In a relatively brief managerial career, Gary Rowett has already managed 4 different championship clubs, as well as Burton Albion. Currently managing at Millwall, Rowett came through the youth ranks at Cambridge United, where he was a star man in something of a golden generation at the Abbey Stadium. A £200,000 move to Premier League Everton followed, before Rowett dropped back into the 2nd tier with Derby County. He went on to play Premier League football for the Rams, Leicester City and Charlton Athletic, and that's enough to put him in 9th. Tony Mowbray. The standard of player in this video is starting to shift into another gear, and Blackburn Rovers boss Tony Mowbray was a very good defender. He only ever played for 3 clubs, namely Middlesbrough, Celtic and Ipswich Town. A hero at Borough, Mowbray was the architect of the club's return from liquidation and relegation to the 3rd tier, all the way back to the top flight before being sold for £1 million to Celtic. Mowbray captained every team he ever played for, starting at Borough when he was just 22, and he played 3 times for England's B team but never quite won a senior cap. Mark Bowen. Bowen is arguably the best player in the Championship right now, but Reading manager Mark Bowen, who is no relation to Jared, wasn't quite the best manager in terms of his playing abilities. A Welsh international for more than a decade, Bowen won 41 caps for Wales, and he is best remembered for his 9-year stint at Norwich City. A diminutive and attack-minded left-back, Bowen was part of the Canary side that finished 3rd in the first Premier League season, and he scored in a 2-1 win over Bayern Munich in Bavaria. Lee Bowyer. It took until 6th place, but we do now have our first full England international. Lee Bowyer won a solitary cap for England in a 2002 friendly game against Portugal under Sven-Göran Eriksson, in which he set up Alan Smith for a goal. It may have been more had Bowyer not had an assault charge hanging over his head during the time that he was enjoying his best form, and both on and off-field incidents tainted the robust midfielder's career. At his best, he was a real asset in midfield, starring for Leeds United, West Ham United, Newcastle United, and Birmingham City in the Premier League. SLAVEN BILIC. A tough and dependable centre-back, SLAVEN BILIC had an impressive career, particularly at international level. He came through the youth ranks with his boyhood club Hajduk Split, with whom he won both the final Yugoslav Cup and the first Independent Croatian League and Cup double. He became West Ham's record signing for £1.3 million in 1996, before signing for Everton for £4.5 million a year later, where injuries and suspensions hampered his progress. With Croatia, the current West Brom boss won 44 caps, reaching the quarterfinals of Euro 96 and the semi-finals of the 1998 World Cup. Jonathan Woodgate. In terms of sheer talent, Jonathan Woodgate was arguably the second best player in this video, but when all is taken into account, I think 4th place is about right. Woodgate was a really gifted centre-back, but injuries hampered him throughout his career. In a career that began with Leeds United, Woodgate still went on to play for the likes of Newcastle, Tottenham, and of course Real Madrid. Despite the routine mocking of that transfer to Real, Woodgate actually played very well for the club following his disastrous debut, and before injuries once again reared their ugly head. He ended his career back at his boyhood club Middlesbrough, and he took over as borough boss permanently in the summer. Scott Parker. One of the youngest managers in the Championship, it wasn't long ago that dynamic midfielder Scott Parker hung up his boots. A 3-time West Ham Player of the Year and 1-time Charlton Player of the Year, Parker won 18 caps in an incredibly competitive England midfield, and also turned out for the likes of Chelsea and Tottenham. Energetic and inventive, the 2010-11 campaign was arguably Parker's finest, and he was named as FWA Footballer of the Year and England Footballer of the Year, despite West Ham getting relegated. SABRI LAMOUCHI. A former French international who won 12 caps for France during their golden era between 1996 and 2001, SABRI LAMOUCHI is unfortunate not to have won any international silverware, just missing out on Les Bleus' 1998 World Cup and Euro 2000 squads. At club level, he did pick up some silverware, winning Ligue 1 titles with both Auxerre and Monaco, as well as a Coppa Italia with Parma. A really gifted central midfielder and an excellent passer of the ball, the current Forest boss also starred for the likes of Marseille and Inter Milan, and he's my runner-up. PHILLIP COCU. I shouldn't think there'll be too many debates with regard to top spot, since PHILLIP COCU was a player of some pedigree. Capped more than 100 times between 1996 and 2006 by the Netherlands, COCU is one of the finest holding midfield players Barcelona have ever had, and no club has had more talent in that specific position over the years. COCU was remarkably consistent, he had a sensational work rate, a tremendous footballing IQ, and he passed the ball with real class. He won 4 league titles in the Netherlands with PSV and 1 in Spain with Barcelona, as well as reaching the semi-finals of the 1998 World Cup with the Netherlands. That's it for today's video. Thank you all for watching. Go ahead and give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel if you really enjoyed it. And with Christmas coming up, if you're a football fan or you know a football fan, it might be worth checking out www.englandsgreatestdefender.com for the ideal Christmas present.